So coming up this weekend is going to be UFC Fight Night, Perez versus Taira in the Apex, and in my opinion, on paper, this really should be a very fun card to watch. Now, I do know that Cannonier versus Imavov and UFC 302 were a little bit of a letdown overall, although Cannonier versus Imavov did have some pretty fun finishes in it. Overall, we haven't really been seeing that many bangers and that many finishes in the last couple of cards, but I do think that this one, of all cards, should be one to turn it around. I mean, on paper, this is looking like a very, very fun card. Not really the biggest names in the world are on the card, but a lot of fighters that are going to be going and putting on a very fun fight, in my opinion. Before I do get into my predictions, though, if you did want to support my channel in any way, the best way to do it is actually through We Want Picks. If you do sign up, you can use my code ARTEM, and it is $10 per month, but if you did want to cancel during the 3-day free trial that you get using my code ARTEM, you can. But aside from that, it is of course $10 per month, and you get access to exclusive articles that I write every single week talking about the regional scene. I'll be doing an article, of course, on the PFL coming up this weekend, as well as videos on the We Want Picks channels for that. But aside from that, you get all of the We Want Picks exclusive member benefits, such as Angelo and Jacob's bets, and also a bunch of tools that just help you make your own bets, as well as exclusive We Want Picks premium membership stuff in the We Want Picks Discord, which is free to join, and I do recommend that you do that. I think there's like 6,600 members in there, and on fight days it can be a lot of fun to talk about the fights as they are happening, but also throughout the week you get to talk with other people that enjoy MMA and also enjoy betting on other sports as well. That is free to join that Discord, but the We Want Picks premium membership is $10 per month. Now, I'm just going to be using the Tapology belt order here. I do believe it's going to be significantly different, but I am recording this just as Cannonier versus Imavov did just finish, because I do have my exams coming up and starting this week, and they will be on over the next couple of weeks, so I just wanted to get this one recorded on the Sunday before all of that does end up kicking off. And kicking off the card on the Tapology order is of course Shayilan Nuerdanbieke taking on a Melquizael Costa. I do like Melquizael Costa in this one here. I've got so many Tapology ads. The new Tapology update has added so many ads, but it's all good because, to be fair, this is a very good website. But Shayilan Nuerdanbieke is actually a very big guy for the weight class. I know he is 5'8", which probably is a little bit on the shorter side compared to the taller strikers such as Costa, but he is really big for featherweight, and he's a very big Chinese wrestler, but he does have cardio problems. You know, he did lose his last fight against Steve Garcia due to having some pretty bad fight IQ, but he did also gas out in that fight after having a lot of success at the beginning of the matchup. But aside from that, you know, the James Krause situation a year and 6 months ago now. But yeah, he's a very good wrestler, very good grappler. The fight IQ is very questionable. His striking is very powerful because he's a big guy for the weight class. But he is going to be wanting to wrestle Melquizael Costa, who's a very talented Muay Thai striker. But man, has he taken a little bit of damage in his last few fights. You know, Steve Garcia himself also ground and pounded him out, and he did take a lot of damage in that fight, and that was only about 6 months ago. But before that, he had a very, very good breakout performance against Austin Lingo, and that was his short notice debut against Moises. I do think that Costa should be able to win this one here. I'm not too sure what the odds are, just looking at him right now. Melquizael Costa is minus 200, and Shayilan Nuerdanbieke is plus 175. Okay, I don't really feel that confident in Melquizael Costa at minus 200, but I do like Melquizael Costa to win. I do think he is going to be the significantly better striker, the much longer guy. He's much more aggressive on the feet. If he can somehow keep this fight on the feet for 15 minutes, he probably will find a finish. And it is worth noting as well, even if Shayilan Nuerdanbieke does have a good first round, he probably is going to gas out. So I like Costa in this one. I actually like Costa to win by like late finish or decision, based especially on those last 2 rounds, and maybe a finish in the second or the third round. Looks like a lot of people like Shayilan. I don't blame them. I think he probably is going to be a popular underdog, and I think he is going to be a good underdog. Another very popular underdog is going to probably be Joshua Van as he fights Tagir Ulanbekov. But I do like Tagir Ulanbekov in the fight. I'm actually interested to see what the odds are, because I think Josh Van opened up as a massive underdog, and now they have closed a little bit. Here are the odds. Josh Van is plus 185 right now, and Tagir Ulanbekov is about minus 200. And I think that's probably quite reasonable. Now, Joshua Van has looked very, very good in the UFC so far, and there are a lot of people out there that rate Joshua Van incredibly highly. In fact, I think people might be rating Joshua Van a little bit too highly because a lot of people were going to pick Joshua Van to beat Tatsuro Taira, which I do think was probably just a little bit much considering he is only 22 years old and he's very early on into his UFC career. Took on that short notice fight against Shayilan and did get by, but then after that, I thought he took too much damage against Borjas to really be sold on him because I think that Borjas probably has some of the worst striking technique in the division right now. And then he did obviously end up with beating and finishing Felipe Bunes, who is just massive for the weight class and is actually a pretty talented guy himself. Former LFA champion, if I'm not mistaken, but also had failed a USADA test in the past, I think. I could be wrong on that one though, but yeah, Joshua Van, so far a little bit up and down. I would say a big up was beating Jalgas on short notice, a big down was getting by Borjas like that, but then he did kind of redeem himself in my eyes. But my issue with Joshua Van in this particular matchup is I do just worry about his size. I genuinely believe that Joshua Van could fight at men's strawweight if it was a division offered in the UFC. I think he's very small for 125 pounds. And I think he's very small compared to a guy like Tagir Ulanbekov. If you do go through Joshua Van's regional career before he did make it into the UFC, there were guys out there that were able to give him some problems in the wrestling. Cleveland McLean, a very talented veteran, a guy that has given a lot of other guys problems in the past. He did end up finishing in the second round, but McLean was able to get takedowns on him. And Paris Moran is absolutely massive for 125 pounds, but he was also able to get the wrestling going against Joshua Van as well. And although Tagir Ulanbekov probably is He probably is one of the worst fighters out of the Nurmagomedov camp, but there is guys like Abu Bakr as well, but he's definitely not the most talented guy. He's definitely not Islam Makhachev, but at 125 pounds, I do think the wrestling probably is going to be a little bit too much for Josh Van here, and I know a lot of people aren't going to like me saying that. A lot of people are going to disagree because a lot of people love Joshua Van. I like Joshua Van as well. I think he's a very fun prospect, but I think this is a big step up in competition. I think it's a tough stylistic matchup for him as well. And yeah, Tagir Ulanbekov just beat Cody Durden, who's a very talented wrestler for the weight class. He just beat Nate Maness, who's absolutely massive for the weight class, and was coming off a decision loss to Umar Nurmagomedov, which hasn't aged too badly, to be honest with you. So I think we're going to have to go with Tagir here. I'm going to go with Tagir Ulanbekov to win by decision. I think he's just going to be too big for Josh Van. I think Van is a very talented guy. I think he is a guy that is absolutely going to be a contender one day, but I think that maybe just stepping up against Tagir right now is a little bit too much too soon. And it is also worth noting as well that this fight has been shuffled a lot, because I think Van was originally meant to fight Sumariji, and then it was going to be against Tatsuro Taira, and now it's against Tagir. We'll get to the main event as well. The same sort of situation has happened there. Now, Jeka Saragih will be fighting Westin Wilson, and I think this is another opportunity for Jeka Saragih to get a knockout win. I don't think people actually understand how big UFC and MMA is in Indonesia right now, because the UFC's official Instagram page actually posted this fight, I think last week or the week before, and people in the comments had no idea why this fight of all people, of all fights, would be posted by the official UFC account with millions and millions of followers. UFC and MMA, especially in Indonesia right now, is actually getting quite big, and although they don't really have many top UFC quality talent right now, the sport is rapidly growing over there, and Jeka Saragih, is the face of Indonesian MMA right now, and I do think he is going to go out there and beat Westin Wilson. Now, it is hard to be super confident in Jeka Saragih because we have seen that there is a massive hole in his game in the grappling. This guy just doesn't have the best takedown defense. This guy just doesn't have the best jiu-jitsu. He just isn't a good grappler, and that's what Westin Wilson is. But my problem with Westin Wilson is I think he's not good enough at striking to stand with Jeka Saragih and not get knocked out. Now, Westin Wilson is a dangerous grappler. We have seen him go out there and get some pretty good wins, but he's been getting knocked out. I mean, how did he lose his last fight? By knockout by Gene Silva. And I thought Gene Silva had a bad performance as well in that fight. Joanderson Brito knocked him out. You know, he did have a knee bar locked in there. Teruto Ishihara, if you watch this, Teruto Ishihara just absolutely sleeps him with a hook in the first round. Wilson is he fights with a very weird karate stance. I think it's just because he's so tall. He's 6'1", but It just doesn't work. He doesn't move his head. He doesn't have striking defense. Jeka Saragih is a little bit sloppy. He's a little bit aggressive. He can be a little bit silly, I guess you could say. But I think this is a winnable fight for him, and I think he does get it done by KO. It's hard to have high confidence in him, though, as I did say. He is not a good grappler at all, and it is going to be very hard to recommend someone to bet him or put him on a parlay at minus 330. I know it's going to be tempting because you see Jeka Saragih, you see Westin Wilson, but I'm thinking at minus 330, I just don't know if it's worth it because Westin Wilson could take him down. He could submit him, but at the end of the day, Jeka is a very talented striker. I believe he knocked out Pawan Martinsinj, who is a former welterweight, and then he knocked out Won Bin Ki, who's absolutely massive for lightweight, and in my opinion should be in the UFC right now because he would be so fun. Fights just like the Koreans on there, ended up getting him slept by Jeka. But Jeka, yeah, I just wanted to say that MMA in Indonesia, I think, is a lot bigger than people think it is, and there is going to be a lot of upcoming Indonesian fighters, I think, in the flyweight division. Now, they have strawweight and men's atomweight over there in Indonesia, just because I think they are a lot smaller people than the rest of the population. But, yeah, men's flyweight, I think there's going to be a lot of Indonesian fighters coming up from there, but you got to go with Saragih. I did just want to point out, though, that there is a very big flaw in his game. Garrett Armfield will now be fighting Brady Hiestand. Now, Brady Hiestand, we kind of know what he wants to do. He wants to wrestle, and it's kind of it, to be honest with you. He had that fight against Nuerdanbieke, which he was winning, but he was getting pieced up a little bit on the feet when the fight was happening, but Ternades kind of didn't really do anything. Controversial stoppage, in my opinion, though. I think that the ref definitely could have let it go on. Before that, though, he did beat Franny Garcia, who had a very unfortunate run in the UFC. Prior to that, he was on the Ultimate Fighter, of course, but Brady Hiestand, he's a wrestler. He knows he's a wrestler. He doesn't really do too much else. I'm not really that sold on his striking, but yeah, he just wants to get the takedowns, and he wants to shoot takedowns over and over and over again. Garrett Armfield is also a pretty decent wrestler, but he has been showing off some incredibly good boxing recently. Like, I didn't actually realize how good at boxing Garrett Armfield truly is until he absolutely smoked Toshiomi Kazama in that fight there. I mean, I picked Kazama to win that fight because Kazama, if you actually do look into him, is an international level judoka, an international level grappler. I thought that he was going to be able to get the fight down to the ground and out-grapple Garrett Armfield, but Armfield just absolutely smoked him on the feet for the whole time that fight really took place, and ended up getting the knockout. So ever since then, I've kind of been a bit sold on him. But then, you know, he took on Brad Katona, who I do rate pretty highly, although he probably is one of the more boring fighters on the roster. And that's why the UFC didn't really want to sign him when he was kind of doing all those things for Brave. But yeah, here he is. And he beat Brad Katona, you know. So he's showing the takedown defense to deal with a decent wrestler in Brad Katona. And now he's going to be fighting a guy which, in my opinion, actually has a very similar sort of style. And Hiestand is going to want to get the takedowns. He is a guy that is making rapid improvements. Every time I've seen Hiestand in the cage, he's looked better and better every single time. But so is Armfield. You know, I think Armfield's striking and his boxing is going to be better than Brady Hiestand. I think that we're just going to see Armfield beat up Brady Hiestand on the feet in this matchup. So I do like Armfield. He is minus 190 here. A lot of people like him too. Maybe we could see a knockout, but Hiestand is a very tough guy. Hiestand's going to be shooting for takedowns over and over and over again. Maybe he slows down at the end. Maybe he does get the takedowns against Armfield, but that boxing, that striking out of Armfield just truly has been impressing me quite a bit recently. And now we have Julia Polastri. I believe this is going to be her UFC debut after being on the Contender Series. Now she's fighting Josefine Knutsson. I was really high on Josefine Knutsson, or Josefine Knutsson, I believe is how it is pronounced. She is really good, but she is so frustrating to watch because she has all of the skill in the world to find finishes. She has all of the skill in the world to find knockouts. And for some reason, she just doesn't want to knock people out. I don't understand what I'm seeing when I watch her fights. Dana White said when she fought against Isis Verbeek that he didn't want to sign her because she had no finishing instinct. Now, to be fair, I don't really understand how he saw that in that fight, because if you guys may or may not have known, Isis Verbeek, I believe, is a former world champion in kickboxing, so I can understand why she was shooting for the takedown she was, and was getting the clinch time, even though it might have been frustrating to watch against that particular opponent. I actually understand the game plan, but against Manik Man, the whole time, Josefine Knutsson was beating the piss out of her the whole fight. And it actually got to points in the second and the third round where Maness would be shouted up against the cage and would be visibly scared of the fact that Josefine Knutsson was about to start throwing some strikes against her, and she was shelling up, she was fading away. And what did Josefine Knutsson do? Did she throw a flying knee? Did she just decide to throw a little bit of boxing? Did she decide to rip the body? No, she decided to clinch and shoot for takedowns. One of the most frustrating performances I have ever seen. Maness set herself up multiple times for highlight knockout losses, and Knutsson didn't take them. And that's what frustrates me so much. It's just the fact that she is so talented. She probably is, and I would be willing to say this, I'm going to say it. She is one of the better strikers at women's strawweight. I will say that she is a world champion level striker. I believe she actually has been a world champion before in striking. Former K1 kickboxer as well. Incredibly talented striker. No finishing ability or no finishing desire. So frustrating. But now she's going to be fighting against the grappler and Julia Polastri, who in my opinion has actually looked very good recently. She lost on the Contender Series to Jasmine Jasudavicius, and Jasudavicius has gone on to be a top 15 fighter right now and has garnered a bit of a fan base. Then she went on to the LFA and, beat this girl. But then after that, she beat the undefeated Brenda Gottig, beat Patricia Alujas in a mismatch, to be honest, though, on the Contender Series, and got it done with the grappling. She's a very talented grappler. She will be the better grappler, but do I think she can get the fight down to the ground? I am going to say no, because I think Knutsson's striking is just too good. She will be able to keep Polastri at the end of her shots. She will be able to keep her at range. Her movement is very good as well. Man, she's not going to get a finish, though. She's not finishing anyone in the UFC. It's a shame. I think Knutsson's going to win a decision. Man, she just got no finishing desire at all, and it's just so frustrating to watch. Knutsson's minus 220. Polastri's probably better than that. I think Polastri is actually very good as a prospect, a very, very talented fighter, but I think Knutsson's just too good at striking. I think Knutsson probably beats most girls in this weight class in a pure striking fight, and the background does prove that. But now we can move on to another fight, which I think actually has the opportunity to be incredibly exciting. We've got Carli Judice taking on Gabriella Fernandes. Carli Judice got signed off that loss on the Contender Series, and in my opinion, I thought she won the fight, but it is what it is. They gave it to Ernesto Caracate, and in that fight, Ernesto Caracate made me look like an idiot, because if you actually watch, I recommend you don't do this, but if you did, watch Ernesto Caracate's previous fights prior to being on the Contender Series. She did nothing. She's such a low volume striker, probably threw 5 strikes a round. It was just unbelievable. And then Carli Judice goes out there against Ernesto and just starts throwing down, and Ernesto starts throwing down as well. And what we get probably is one of the better fights on the Contender Series last year. I do like the fact that they signed Carli Judice, because I like the fact that she fights in the way that she does. To put it bluntly, in women's MMA, not that many people fight the way that Carli Judice does. She is an incredibly aggressive striker, and she's just really dangerous. And that's what makes her so exciting, is the fact that she is willing to come forward, she is willing to bomb away, she is willing to throw fight finishing potential strikes in the matchup. But the problem that I do kind of have with her a little bit being signed to the UFC this early on is we've never seen her tested. I have no idea how good Carli Judice is at grappling, because the fight against Ernesto Caracate didn't really have any grappling in it, and before that she was just knocking girls out in the first round. So it's just a tough one to gauge how good Carli Judice really is going to be at the UFC level. And taking on a girl like Gabriella Fernandes, who does actually have that experience in the LFA, taking on much more experienced opponents, and getting those finishes. But then she come in and fought Jasmine Jasudavicius, who wrestled her. She fought Teresa Bleda, who wrestled her and is a very good wrestler. I think that now we've got Fernandes taking on Carli Judice. I think Carli Judice is probably going to be the one getting out-grappled in the matchup. And although Fernandes, I would actually describe her as mostly being a striker, I don't think she's going to mess around on the feet with Carli Judice. I think that she probably is going to wrestle. She probably is going to grapple. Even though Carli Judice is very talented and is very dangerous on the feet, I think that the experience just is a real thing. Now, I would pick Carli Judice to beat a lot of girls probably in this division, but I think Gabriella Fernandes is just going to be a tough matchup for her, and I feel like maybe this is one of those kind of times where the UFC might have done her a disservice by signing her so early, whereas they could have maybe signed her to one of those deals where, what's it called, like a development deal, kind of like what Taira Nuerdanbieke is on right now, where you're kind of signed to the UFC, but you just fight on the regional shows to get more experience and to improve, and then they bring you in. I can't really remember the last time someone was on one of those, but yeah, that's happened before. I kind of think that Judice would definitely develop better from that. But yeah, Gabriella Fernandes is minus 225. I wouldn't bet on Fernandes at all, but I do think she wins. I think she probably is going to get that grappling going in that fight. And now Nate Maness will be fighting against Jimmy Flick. Jimmy Flick just got a pretty big win, which saved his career for sure when he defeated Malcolm Gordon. Yeah, a good win for Jimmy Flick, but prior to that, I didn't think that he was looking all that good. Now, he's fighting Nate Maness, which, to this day, I can't believe that Nate Maness makes 125 pounds, and we're about to get into another fight where someone is going to be attempting to make 125, which is just nuts. Nate Maness is actually quite big. He's 5'10", and he wasn't a small bantamweight, in my opinion, at all, until he fought Umar Nurmagomedov, and then I guess because Umar Nurmagomedov is probably one of the biggest bantamweights in history, he thought, oh, I'm too small for the weight class. Honestly, Nate Maness, you weren't too small for the weight class, mate. Umar is just massive for the weight class. But then he fought, Tagir, which is just a kind of a logical next step after losing to Umar, and did lose that fight pretty quickly. It wasn't a very good move for him. But then he beat Matheus Mendonça, ended up knocking him out. Mendonça just maybe some of the worst fight IQ we've ever seen. I think Maness does beat Jimmy Flick, though. Jimmy Flick is a very talented grappler, but my kind of problem with Jimmy Flick is that's kind of all he's got. He's just really good at grappling and not really that good at wrestling and not really that good at striking either. He does have that really good win over Cody Durden, which has aged like fine wine, but he come back, got knocked out by Charles Johnson, then got knocked out by Alessandro Costa. I think now that he's fighting a guy like Nate Maness, who is very big for the weight class and is going to be the significantly better striker out of the two, and I think will still be good enough, despite getting out wrestled by Umar and Tagir, to keep the fight on the feet against Jimmy Flick. I think he is probably going to get a finish. I think we're going to see Nate Maness get the knockout here. I just don't really rate Jimmy Flick's striking all that much. Now, he is so dangerous off his back. He's such a good, wicked grappler. That is a very fun grappler to watch, but I think this is just a bad matchup for him. You know, I think that Nate Maness probably is going to be able to go out there and get it done. In fact, Nate Maness is minus 400. That is actually crazy. Nate Maness being minus 400 in the fight. It looks like the bookies really think Nate Maness gets it done as well. That's interesting. Lucas Almeida is now fighting Timothy Cuamba. I think this is probably going to be my first underdog pick of the card, as I am going to go with Lucas Almeida, but let's see what the bookies do have for it. I'm trying to find it right now. I probably should have memorized the order that they had it in. Lucas Almeida is plus 145. Cuamba is minus 175. So yeah, my first underdog pick of the card. Cuamba's really good. I do want to put that out there, and a very, very slick, talented boxer. Had a very good performance on the Contender Series against Matteo Vogel. Probably could have got the contract there just because he did beat up Matteo Vogel. No, I'm getting confused with someone else. I think I got him confused with Danny Silva. That's a fight which I think Matteo Vogel could have won, if I'm not mistaken. But then after that, he did beat Michael Stack, and then he came in on short notice against Balahioki, and Balahioki, I never really rated him as high as like a lot of other people in the space do. People would think that Oki's like the best fighter in the world. But man, I didn't expect him to make Balahioki look that human. Upper weight class as well, by the way, at 155 pounds. And if you guys don't know, Oki is massive for 155 pounds, but just doesn't really have the best cardio in the world. But yeah, Timothy Cuamba is kind of how I know him, because he must have just changed his name to be that recently on Tapology. But yeah, Timmy Cuamba, very talented boxer, but I have had issues with him in the past in some matchups. He doesn't like pressure at all. And in fact, against Ivan Tenner, if you actually do watch this matchup, he did just give up. He could have gotten out of that situation he was in, and he just kind of fumbled under that pressure. And that's kind of why I did pick Balahioki to beat him, because I thought that Balahioki was going to land some big shots in the first round, and Timmy Cuamba was not going to keep going forward. But hey, that did not happen. Timmy Cuamba made it a fight. But now we're going to probably get another striker versus striker matchup, and every time we see Lucas Almeida in a striker versus striker matchup, he looks really good. Now, I'm pretty sure he did lose one in his last fight against Andre Phil. He got knocked out, but before that, he got dominated in the wrestling and the grappling by Pat Sabatini, but Pat Sabatini's a lot better at wrestling and grappling than Timothy Cuamba is, in my opinion. He beat Mike Trezano by KO, and at the time, that was a pretty good win as well. I think in the striker versus striker matchup, the guy that is going to be maybe not more aggressive, but the guy that's definitely going to be more gritty and the guy that's going to be willing to brawl is the guy with his career on the line right now. And just Lucas Almeida in general is a very talented guy, was absolutely putting it on. Daniel Zellhuber in the first round of that fight really was scrapping it out, and Dana White actually said, man, I'm going to sign you, Daniel, but man, I was impressed with your opponent in the first round, and he said that if we saw Almeida get another win on the regional scene, which he did over a decent opponent, he was going to sign him to the UFC, and that's why he's here. I do like Almeida. I'm picking him as the underdog right here. I know a lot of people are going to like Timothy Cuamba. Striker versus striker matchup, it's hard to pick against Almeida, man. Almeida is really dangerous on the feet. I don't know, but the thing is, you could make the same argument that Balahioki is so dangerous on the feet as well, and he didn't finish Cuamba. I think we're going to see Lucas Almeida go out there and have a good performance. You know, he's a good fighter at the end of the day. I like Almeida in this matchup. I might be the only one. I might be on an island with that one, though, but that's okay. It happens. Now, Miles Johns is fighting Douglas Silva de Andrade. Johns is just a really hard fighter to break down because he's a wrestler that fell in love with his hands, but now it seems like he's going back to that wrestling, so good to see, I guess. But yeah, Miles Johns fighting Douglas Silva de Andrade. Douglas Silva de Andrade has to start slowing down at some point, man. This guy is 39 years old now, just beat Cody Stamann. And although that's, in my opinion, not really that good of a win anymore because Cody Stamann probably lost to Luan Lacerda and then just lost to the guy from France, Taylor Lapillus. It's still a good win because Cody Stamann is a very good wrestler, and Miles Johns probably is going to try and wrestle out there against Douglas Silva de Andrade. But before that, he was obviously lost to Said Nurmagomedov, who's a great fighter. But Miles Johns, interesting sort of case, you know, is coming off a pretty good win over Cody Gibson in a fight, which in my opinion, Cody Gibson just didn't really look that good in. And then against Dan Argueta, Miles Johns won it, and then I think he failed the drug test in that one there, but for some reason, it might have been a tainted supplement since he was able to come back so quickly. Yes, that's true. That's right. It was just... Okay, anyway. Educated myself in the middle of the video. That's fantastic look, isn't it? But yeah, I like Miles Johns in the fight because I think he can mix it up. And it looks like by the Tapology votes, this might actually be an underdog pick. It is. Miles Johns is plus 100. Douglas Silva de Andrade is minus 120. Douglas Silva de Andrade is such a dangerous striker, and I can understand it. But I think we're going to see Miles Johns go back to that wrestling, which we know him so well for. Miles Johns is a very talented wrestler. He did fall in love with his hands, and that is a big red flag. Whenever you see that, it is definitely kind of a bit scary because you know that they can wrestle, you know that they can do it, and then they don't do it. But I think we're going to see Miles Johns go out there and do it. I said do it like 4 times in the same sentence. That's just what we do over here at Artem MMA. English is hard. Johns. I like Johns. I like him to win by decision. I think he uses that boxing. I think he uses that wrestling. And recall this. Now, Imavov versus Cannonier, that event just happened, right? I predicted in my video that Punahali, Pillow Hands Punahali, that nickname, ever more fitting than ever, was going to wrestle for the first time in his career. And he did it, right? Miles Johns, he's going to wrestle in this fight. He needs to win this fight. It's a winnable fight if he wrestles. Pillow Hands Punahali landed like 200 ground and pound strikes and could not knock out Miguel Baeza, who is one of the chiniest fighters at 170 pounds. Does it make sense? No. What does make sense is that Punahali just can't hit that hard, even though he's absolutely massive. It doesn't make sense. But now, like Nate Maness, we have Asu Almabaev fighting against Jose Johnson. And Jose Johnson, I don't know why he's doing this. He's trying to make 125. He's 6 foot tall. He's taller than me. I'm 5'11", and I fought my little boxing fight that I did at heavyweight. So that makes me feel real good about myself. This guy's gonna weigh in at like 57 kilograms or something, which is just crazy. Jose Johnson, incredibly talented striker. He does have a Muay Thai background of some sort. He is a guy that you look at their record and you think 16-8, it's not a good record, which it isn't, but if you actually look through his whole career, before this guy got into the UFC, he had fought some really talented guys. Submitted Mo Miller, who, that win hasn't aged well to be fair, but at the time was a very good win. Lost to Mana Martinez. Okay. Dre Miley, the one-eyed guy, if you guys may or may not know, fought for Bellator quite a bit. Lost to Ronnie Lawrence, former UFC fighter. Rafael Costa, 11-2. Pipe Vargas, decent win, because Pipe Vargas, if you guys may or may not know, has literally fought all of the best prospects in bantamweight. This guy, he just doesn't take easy fights. Diego Manzur, talented prospect. Austin Bashi, like 12-0 right now, going to be on the Contender Series. Danny Chavez, former UFC fighter, if you didn't know. Pipe Vargas. Man, this guy just does not... And Victor Madrigal was on the Contender Series as well, by the way. But yeah, you look at this guy's career. Levi Moles as well, he's retired for some reason or another. I think it's because the UFC didn't want to sign him, he retired. But this guy's like 17-3, 16-4. Jose Johnson did not take easy fights going up. And now that he's here, he is in the UFC... He's looked okay. I mean, he did lose to Damon Blackshear by Twister, which isn't a good look. But after that, he beat Chad Anhaliga, which, once again, isn't really that good of a win. But Chad Anhaliga is coming off a very good win over Charalampus Gregoriou. Jose Johnson, his striking is wicked. He is a very, very good striker at bantamweight, though. What's he doing at 125? This guy's 6 foot tall. If he can safely make the weight, he might be one of the tallest flyweights we've ever seen. The problem with Jose Johnson is, although I actually think his grappling is quite good, and it has definitely progressed a lot, as you can see in his Contender Series fight against Jack Cartwright, he still can get taken down, and Asu Almabaev is going to be a guy that's going to try and take him down. Now, it is worth noting, though, that the size difference in this fight could be hilarious, as he is 5'4", but Asu Almabaev isn't a guy like Josh Van, who's 5'5", that I would consider a guy that's small for 125. I actually don't see Asu Almabaev being a small flyweight. He might look like one in this matchup, but I think we're just going to see Asu Almabaev go out there and take down Jose Johnson. I don't know how I feel about this move to 125. He was not a small bantamweight at all. Yeah, he's just a really good striker. But now he's taking on a wrestler. It's just a weird matchup to take. We just saw him beat CJ Vergara. We saw him submit Ode Osborne, which is a similar stylistic matchup to this one, you could argue. I like Asu Almabaev. He was a good sign-in from the UFC. He was signed with Azat Maksum, who is kind of been proven to maybe be a little bit fraudulent. I just don't think this is going to be that fraud check that the Maksum versus Johnson fight was. So I like Almabaev. I'm going to pick him to win by submission as well. Johnson at 135, I kind of like his ceiling because he is very good at striking, incredibly good at striking. Asu Almabaev, minus 400, Jose Johnson plus 300. I mean, I don't even know if Johnson can make 125 safely. I mean, this is just a crazy move to me, to be honest. And now Adam Fugat's going to be fighting Josh Quinlan. It's tough for me because I don't really rate Adam Fugat that highly, but he just kind of wins fights that you don't expect him to. He beat Solomon Renfro, smoked him, and that win has aged well as Renfro's gone on to the PFL and has had mixed success, but he still had some success and got a couple of decent wins over there. Loses to Michael Morales, but kind of expected as it's Michael Morales. And then just absolutely smokes Yusaku Kinoshita in his debut, but hindsight's 2020, it's not that good of a win. And then he fights Mike Malott, and the whole time, this is actually the fight that kind of sold me on Mike Mallott's striking, because I actually couldn't believe how good Mike Malott looked on the feet in this matchup, because if you watch that fight, the whole time Mike Malott is a step ahead of Adam Fugat. Adam Fugat can't figure out what's going on in the striking, he can't get anything done. The whole time Malott is managing to counter him. But he's not fighting Mike Malott, he's fighting Josh Quinlan, and more importantly, he's fighting Josh Quinlan off the source. And that is a very important thing to note, because if you guys don't know, Josh Quinlan, this guy loves the juice, because he was absolutely piped up on the stuff when he beat Logan Urban on the Contender Series, but the UFC still signed him anyway. And then he was meant to fight against Jason Witt, but this bout rescheduled. The reason why the bout was rescheduled was because Josh Quinlan failed the drug test, so Nevada wouldn't let him fight there. So they rescheduled it to a different state in California, which would let him fight there, because he was still testing positive for something. This is nuts. And then he fights against Trey Waters and looks like an absolute shell of himself months later. Doesn't look that good against Danny Barlow. He's definitely off whatever the whatever the fridge was on, he was on when he was on the regional scene now. So it's kind of hard to tell, because if you do actually look through Josh Quinlan's regional career, he's absolutely smoking these guys. He absolutely smoked Jason Witt. You've got to consider, he's not the same guy anymore. He's not on the juice. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't on the juice when he looked really bad against Trey Waters and got embarrassed by Trey Waters on short notice, who the week before that fought and got dropped, by the way. So Trey Waters coming on short notice, got dropped the weekend before, and then absolutely pieced up Josh Quinlan the whole time and exposed him for being a bit one-dimensional. All Quinlan has is a left hook, but I think he can probably land it on Adam Fugit. That's the problem. I'm going to pick Adam Fugit, though. I don't feel good about it. I just don't trust Josh Quinlan, man. He's a no-one sheet. That's all I'm going to say it. You know, the evidence is there. Yeah, I think Fugit's going to go out there and win, but it's hard to pick him because he's not that great, you know. Like he can be pieced up, but Mike Miller, I know he lost to Neil Magny, he was looking good still in that fight. Probably still is a top 15 level fighter right now. I think he beats Quinlan. Gotta go with Adam Fugit here. Don't feel good about it. Fugit's actually a slight favorite, -115 on one sportsbook, but -110 on Bet Online if you guys can see that, and then he's -105 on another one. So odds are probably going to go all over the place. It just depends. I mean, if Josh Quinlan, if I knew for a fact that Quinlan was back on whatever it was when he knocked out Logan Urban, I would pick him. But I don't have evidence that proves that he is. Now we've got a very, very odd one. Ikram Aliskerov taking on Antonio Trocoli. I guess nobody wanted to fight Ikram Aliskerov on short notice, so yeah, it looks like Artem's gonna have to be open and honest here and let you guys know the facts about Antonio Trocoli. The one fact is he was, or maybe still is, the partner of Mackenzie Dern. So for a lot of people out there, he probably already is public enemy number one. Antonio Trocoli fights on the Contender Series in 2019 against this fella called Kenneth Burr. And he's on this thing called Nandrolone. If you guys don't know what Nandrolone is, it's a pretty big deal. It's something that you probably don't want to be on when you're trying to fight in the UFC. And then he goes out there and fights at 200 pounds against this fella who was a 7-1 record somehow, probably a blown up lightweight to be honest with you, and looks really good. And then gets an opportunity to fight on short notice back in the UFC, and pulls out of it against Ovin St. Preux. And then he goes out there with an opportunity to fight against Umar Sy. And guess what happens? He pulls out of it. Why do the UFC think that this guy can fight at 185 pounds on a week and a half's notice and not pull out of the fight? This guy was accepting fights on short notice against Ovin St. Preux and Umar Sy at 205 pounds, 205 pounds, and then he was pulling out. We don't know why he was pulling out. He might have been pulling out because he couldn't make 205, and now he's accepting a fight at 185 pounds on a week and a half notice. I don't even know if this is going to be the fight by the time it happens in the weekend. And to make things even more interesting, how am I supposed to know how good Antonio Trocoli is? Because his only good win recently was 4 years and 10 months ago over a guy that put himself in a submission. And then he looks pretty good against a blown up overweight welterweight. Ikram Aliskerov should win. But the thing is, it's dangerous because I don't know how good Antonio Trocoli is the whole time. This guy could have been in the gym every single day for the last 2.5 years, absolutely grinding, waiting for this opportunity to come into the UFC. And now that he's showing up, he's pulled out of 2 fights in a row. How am I supposed to know he's going to fight? And then the funny thing is as well, he was meant to fight this guy Kenneth Burr in a rematch, I believe for Superior. And then he pulls out of that as well anyway. Kenneth Burr offered you the rematch, mate. He was willing to fight you in a rematch. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to go with Aliskerov. I think Aliskerov is actually very good. If you guys know, he had that fight against Khamzat Chimaev. He did get knocked out in 90 seconds, but he defended a couple takedowns. Woohoo, very good. But he's coming to the UFC, smoked this guy Mario Souza, which is a very good win, because I think Mario Souza, although he's lost 3 times in the Contender Series, which is nuts, they should just sign him outright, to be honest with you. Just absolutely obliterated this guy recently. It went kind of viral on Twitter, absolutely smoked him. Yeah, Mario Souza, decent fighter. It's just a shame he's never really been able to get in the UFC because he fought Chitty on the Contender Series, but before that, was that his first time in the Contender? I thought he fought on the Contender Series 3 times. No, he won on the Contender Series against Mariusz Kizakewicz, who then lost in Canada to the middleweight from Israel that lost to what's his name? Eli Aronov. That's right. Anyway, yeah, I've gone off the rails. Ikram Aliskerov, I'm gonna pick him to win by knockout. He might even take him down and win by TKO. He's what, minus 450. How are we supposed to? No, that was against Andre Muniz. Wait, what are the odds for this fight? He's probably going to be a massive favorite. I don't know. I went a bit off the topic. We're coming back for the main event. Alex Perez taking on Tatsuro Taira. I just watched Alex Perez versus Muhammad Mokaev back because I do think that this fight probably is the best fight to get an understanding of how this could look. And I don't want to do it. I want Tatsuro Taira to win. But Perez did look really good against Muhammad Mokaev. And that was his first fight back in a year and a bit after losing to Alejandro Pantoja in 90 seconds. And then before that, he hadn't fought for a year and a half. So he's been super inactive. I actually don't still know what was going on with Alex Perez. But obviously something was. And now he's come back and he's just become the most active flyweight on the roster. Which is crazy because Charles Johnson is still in the promotion. But yeah, he goes out there and takes on Matheus Nicolau on short notice. Knocks him out, which is nuts still to think about. And now he's fighting Tatsuro Taira, and Tatsuro Taira has not fought anyone this level of competition yet. His last fight was against Carlos Fernandes, who is probably fighting for his job right now. Edgar Chairez probably going to be fighting for his job soon. Jesus Aguilar probably going to be fighting for his job soon. Cedric Vergara definitely fighting for his job soon. Carlos Candelario fought for his job and isn't in the UFC anymore. Like, these guys that he's fighting are not top 15 level guys. And now he's going to be fighting against Alex Perez, who I think is ranked number 5 right now. And it's been kind of put together on short notice. Alex Perez is coming off that win over Matheus Nicolau, defended a lot of takedowns against Muhammad Mokaev, especially in round 1. And Tatsuro Taira's striking, although it is getting better, it's not amazing. He's a really, really good grappler, but he's not a good striker. And Edgar Chairez was giving him problems on the feet 10 months ago. Alex Perez is plus 165 right now. Tatsuro Taira is minus 190. I want Taira to win, but Taira, if you look at actually the fight between Perez and Mokaev, I was amazed at how much bigger Alex Perez actually looked in that fight. He looked significantly bigger than Muhammad Mokaev in that fight, and I've always kind of thought that Tatsuro Taira is a guy that I think probably needs to put a little bit more muscle on before taking on these top guys, because I know technique is definitely everything. I don't know if he's actually just going to have the pure strength to be able to outmuscle Alex Perez in grappling situations or wrestling situations to get the fight down to the ground. I actually think that Alex Perez is probably going to be able to defend most of these takedowns and keep the fight on the feet and find the knockout over Tatsuro Taira. So I'm going to go with Alex Perez in this fight. So yeah, I don't like it because I really like Tatsuro Taira, you know. I think he would have beaten Joshua Van, as I did say earlier. Who else was he matched up with? Tsumadieshi? No, that was Joshua Van. And then he's fought, like, I genuinely think that Tim Elliott would have given him a tough fight, you know. So now he's fighting Alex Perez, and I know everyone's like, oh, it's Alex Perez, haha. Alex Perez has legitimized himself a lot recently in the division with that knockout over Nicolau. Yeah, I like that Perez has been active. I'm gonna have to go. Okay, there's definitely picks out this. So most people are picking Taira. Listen, I want Taira to win. I do, and it does pain my heart a little bit picking against him. But I just think that he's just not that big for the weight class. Perez is big, especially if you watch the fight against Mokaev. I think you'll also be quite amazed at how, not really amazed, just kind of shocked, I guess, at how big Perez actually is for 125. He's a big guy. He's got big power on the feet. Tatsuro Taira, the last time he fought a big guy with big power on the feet was Edgar Chairez, and Edgar Chairez gave him problems on the feet, and that was on short notice. I mean, he dominated Aguilar. That kind of is what it is. Vergara is Vergara. Yeah, honestly, like, man, like, just in hindsight, you know, the UFC did so well to build him up as a prospect. 15-0 right now. What is he? 5-0, 6-0 in the UFC. Alex Perez. I think it's too much too soon. I think it is. It sucks, but I think it's just too much too soon. So I'm gonna go with Alex Perez in this fight, most likely by KO. To be honest with you, when he just knocked out Mateus Nicolau. Yeah, it's a tough one. And even then, Perez can grapple. The problem is, though, he does give up his back a lot. So maybe Taira could get the rear naked. I kind of hope that happens because Taira, like, I mean, the UFC is trying to build a fan base in Japan. Taira fighting for the belt against Pantoja in Japan would be massive. So that could be cool. But yeah, I don't know. I just kind of don't like the matchup for Tatsuro, to be honest with you. But let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next one.